Welcome to my cafe, my Pet Info Café. Pour yourself a warm cup of your favorite and let's chat about our love of animals. I am your host, Jennifer Eileen, and I am so delighted to present our topic today, cat rescue out of a data farm construction. Let's hear from our guest today, Tom Bove, Executive Director of Loudoun Community Cat Coalition, and let's welcome our very special pet guest, Missy. She is our VIP pet. Tom, welcome. You've been here a few times before. It's nice to come and talk. This is just such a fascinating story, but we must start with our VIP. Tell us all about this lovely girl, Missy.
Oh, thanks for having us back again.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah.
This is Missy. She's a cat. We do trap, neuter, return. That's what our rescue does for outdoor cats. So we get them, we trap them, we get them spayed or neutered, vaccinated, we microchip them, fix any medical issues they have, and then we return them to their homes where they generally have caregivers who are taking care of them. So Missy came to us. She was very, very sick, and she was in a fairly large colony that's actually in a city, an urban area. So wasn't a really great location for the cats to live, but they did have a good caregiver. But she was just so ill when we brought her in to have her spayed and vaccinated and all. We had to hold her for at least, it was supposed to be 2 weeks for antibiotics. We ended up keeping her for about 3 weeks and found that she was super friendly.
Yeah.
So that any cats that we find that can be adopted out, if the caregivers agree to surrender them, we get them adopted as indoor pets. So Missy's about 8 years old. She had her last litter of kittens earlier this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and she won't have any more now. She's been spayed. She's in great condition, great health, and she is a super friendly cat. She actually loves indoor life. She's a medium-haired domestic, black with a little white spot on her chest, and she's just adorable.
Yes, she is.
And she's available for adoption.
Yes, she is, and by medium hair, she's a little fluffier than a short hair.
Yep.
That's right. Can we see that little star? Where's her little star? Where's her little necklace? Oh, I see. It's kind of lower down.
Yeah, a little farther down her chest.
Okay, maybe we'll get a picture of that later. And she probably wants to walk on the coffee table. Is that okay? we can run interference for her. Oh, look at that tail. Oh my gosh.
It's fluffy like a foxtail.
Data centers are such a thing in Loudoun County and all through this area. When did you first hear about this data center and where is it?
So the data center where we did the rescue is down in Aldie, and it was behind a neighborhood that we actually started doing trap, neuter, return in 2017.
Okay.
And there were some people living in the neighborhood that were feeding cats that were coming out of the woods behind their house on a cul-de-sac. And we TNR'd about a dozen cats there, and there were three ladies in the neighborhood on the cul-de-sac who would take turns feeding the cats in the woods behind their houses. Mm-hmm. And it was fine, everything was fine for years, but in late 2024, we got a call that the last lady there who was feeding had sold her house to a company that was developing that area for data centers. So about half the neighborhood, they actually bought the houses in the part of the neighborhood to tear them down and build data centers. And also we heard they were going to tear down the forest behind the neighborhood, just clear cut it down to nothing and then put the buildings in. So she was concerned about the cats because she knew there was a colony living in that forest. So we went down to try to figure out what was going on. She had spoken to some of the construction workers that were setting up the fencing and bringing the heavy equipment in about what the schedule was, so we knew what kind of time frame we had. And they're supposed to start construction in February of 2026. And so we went out in the last summer to start trapping the cats. We found that even though the last ones, when we were finished trapping there and we hadn't heard of any new cats or kittens, there were about a dozen cats. When we went out to start trapping them, we found there were actually about 35 cats. So people have been dumping cats there over time because they see other cats, they know somebody's feeding them, they want to abandon their cats. And there also was a transient neighborhood. There were a lot of military folks who were moving in and out of there. And some of them had outdoor pets and they just left them behind when they left. So the colony turned into a lot more work than we thought. There were some cats that weren't fixed. There were 2 or 3 litters of kittens. And so we started in late summer, and around October, the construction workers who were very helpful, they would watch out for cats. They knew we were trying to move them. They knew they were there. They told us the schedule had changed, and they actually were going to start demolition in November. So our schedule got cut short by about 4 months, and we were in a real hurry to try to get the cats out. And it's not easy to, one, to trap the cats, and two, to find homes for them, because most of them were needed to be barn cats. They're feral cats.
Mm-hmm.
All the friendly ones that we trapped, we did find some that were social because they had been pets that were left behind.
Mm-hmm.
So those we got adopted very quickly into indoor homes, and then we started working on the feral cats. And we don't like to trap them and hold them because they don't do well in indoor environments.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're trapping and returning the cats as the ones that weren't fixed yet. We were making sure they got their vaccines updated and they were ready to move when we found barn homes for them. But with the compressed schedule, it was actually kind of a heroic thing by one of our volunteers who took her, we knew we had to get the cats out, and we had to be off the property by November 1st. So she volunteered her garage, her 2-car garage, pulled her cars out, cleared the whole place out, set it up as kind of a cat sanctuary, put shelters in it, a couple of cat trees in it, and we trapped and moved 30 cats into her garage, her 2-car garage.
Wow.
And there are still about 15 cats there. We've been placing them since then, but we had to get them off the property for their survival and safety. And we still have about 15 cats that need outdoor barn homes or garage homes or winery or brewery homes, any kind of building. And the cats will do rodent control, so a lot of people like them in barns where they have feed for animals or livestock, and they help keep the mice out and the snakes out of the buildings. But we do have about 15 cats still who need to be adopted, and there's no fee for the adoption. And we set everything up for the people to transition the cats to their place.
Okay, well, you brought up a couple of important subjects. One is trapping and the whole system that you have, and we did an episode about that. But for a trap of this nature, was there something different about what you did?
There was, yeah, because we were, some of the cats had been fixed. We wanted to make sure that there was no more breeding going on as we tried to place these cats.
Okay.
We had to use different types of traps. So, because if you put out just the regular humane box traps, you catch cats indiscriminately. They walk in, and you also, was a lot of wildlife there. So there were raccoons and foxes and other things that would run into the traps. It makes it very difficult. So we used drop traps, which are just large squares. It's kind of like the old Elmer Fudd trap, where there's a stick that holds the trap up, and you have to physically watch it, and literally you have a string tied to the stick. And when the right cat goes under, or the right couple of cats, or 1 or 2 cats, and one of them is the one you want, you drop the trap, and then you selectively pull the one out that needs to be placed. So we did that at quite a bit. It was almost exclusively drop trapping at this site to make sure we could get the cats we needed without, because also the more you trap cats, the less likely they are to walk into a trap when you want to get them.
They get wise to it.
Yeah, so it was kind of challenging.
Hey, sweetie. Hey, how are you? Oh, I love black kitty cats. Yes, I do.
But we did get all the cats out. We got them out in time, and the workers were very careful as they did their work.
That's right, honey. You want to go somewhere.
To make sure the cats were safe.
Yeah. I mean, that's so heroic. How are they doing in their new garage?
They're actually doing really well. Some of them, of course, needed some medical care, so it was good that they were captive anyway.
Okay.
But they're all doing well. They're all healthy. We've got a lot of pictures that. If people want to see what they look like, they just look like a regular cat, but they really don't they're not like Missy, where they're going to sit in your lap and like to be petted or touched.
So what colors do you have, like tiger stripes and black and
there's several
spotted?
tabbies. It was kind of a black and white colony because they were living there and breeding with one another. There's a lot of black and white, kind of like the cow pattern on some of the cats.
Yeah, that's very popular.
There's some tuxedo cats and some tabbies. We didn't have too many oranges or torties or tortoiseshell. It was just they kind of run in the genetics, or kind of manage themselves.
Well, do tell us some of the success stories about homing a barn cat. What's a perfect home for a barn cat and for the human?
Yeah, they're very similar because they're living creatures, they're mammals, so they need a warm place. Temperate, I'd say. They're not as picky as humans about their temperature settings, but they don't like to freeze. So we do look for housing, like an outbuilding, a garage, or a shed, something that has heat, or at least is protected from wind and rain. If it's an outdoor garage that doesn't have heat, we advise putting shelters in them that are insulated off the ground, like on a wood pallet or something, so the cat's not sleeping on the ground.
Okay.
Because they can get hypothermia just like people do. So an outdoor building that has temperature control is ideal, but without that, a good insulated shelter is sufficient. Access to fresh food and water is essential. So we do tell people that, you know, don't just put the cat in your garage and think it's going to survive on its own. They can survive outdoors, but also, as we see with the ones that we trap, they're not really the healthiest. A healthy cat's a better hunter than a starving cat.
Okay.
And they'll stay healthy for longer. And so we want people to put food out for the cats and have access to fresh water, and they'll do a great job hunting and keeping the mice and other animals out. But there's a process to setting them up as well, that you can't just put a cat in a new building and expect it to stay, because it doesn't know where it is. It's in a completely foreign environment.
Back to you.
Yeah, come
Pass
back,
this
Missy.
back. Here you go, Aldie.
We set them up in large crates, the extra large 48-inch wire crates that you see that usually people will crate dogs in.
Okay.
We acclimate the cats in those, so we'll set up 2 or 3 of those and connect them together with the doors removed. And that way the cat has some room to move around. You feed them, and they actually use a litter box while they're in the crates. And usually about 3 to 4 weeks, minimum 3 weeks, ideally 4 weeks, depending on the cat, sometimes 5 weeks, living in that crate environment inside the building where they're going to reside.
Okay.
And that way they get used to the smells and the sounds, they get used to the caregiver. So they typically they bond with the person that's feeding them and caring. I mean, cats know when they're being cared for, and they appreciate it, so they'll stick around. You want to develop a relationship with this cat. Even though you may never touch it, it will know you, you'll know it, and it knows it's in a safe place, and it's got access to the life's necessities of, you know, food, water, and shelter. And then eventually you open the crates. If the cat adjusts very rapidly, some do within 2 weeks, they're happy and they know they're home, and they'll stay. So typically we still say keep them in for, they don't have to stay in the crate. If you have a tack room or something, you can enclose them in. You can let them out into a larger area, and then eventually give them access to the whole building, and then indoor, outdoor access. And they typically will stay. About 2/3 of the cats will stay. There's some cats that just are going to roam, and so as hard as you try, some will just find their way off to the place where they're comfortable.
Okay.
But at least you've given them a good start.
That's right, a very good start. Well, can you tell us one of the success stories or more about the barn cats that you would rescue?
Oh yeah, we've set up, since we trapped around 35 cats, we've set up so far around 20 of them. Between 20 and 2 dozen, I think there are 3 being set up this weekend actually. We try to adopt them out in pairs or in triplets as 3 cats, because they're more likely to stay if they have a buddy. So if you just adopt one out, it might stay, but you know, if it's got a friend and the other cat, one cat stays, the other one's more likely to hang around it. And we always say, if one of them takes off and you're left with a singleton, you know, having 3 is even better than 2, because then you've got a pair that's likely to stay. So the more they're safety in numbers, so we try to adopt them in groups, and we've adopted several out in the Lovettsville area. A lot of the adoptions go into Fairfax County or Western Loudoun County, where there's still some rural areas. They don't do well in busy neighborhoods, obviously, because of the traffic. But we've adopted 3 out. We set up in Lovettsville last weekend, and since we started doing this back in October for this particular site, all the cats have stayed. We haven't had any reports where the cats have run off. So they're all adapting well, because they've been fed for years and had people around them. They live near a neighborhood, so they aren't really afraid of people. They're not comfortable being sitting in a lap like this cat is. Yeah. So we've had some really good success stories with this particular colony, because they've been around for so long. They're mostly older cats. The kittens that were born there, we were able to socialize, and they're adopted as indoor pets. But most of these cats are probably between 7 and 9 years old, and they're used to being fed and cared for by people, so they adapt pretty well.
Well, I think the main reason I think someone wants a barn cat is for rodent control.
Right.
Okay.
That's what we call it, chemical-free rodent control. So you don't have to put poisons out. You have your cats. They're fun to look at. They like to play. They enjoy it. They keep the rodents away. And just having a cat is a deterrent as well. So even if you're not seeing them catch mice, if mice know there's a cat around, they will try to avoid that area, and the cats will run them out. So They do a great job at rodent control. And these cats have been, I mean, they live outdoors, and even though we feed them, they still, they still hunt, and they still go after the little pests that you don't want around.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
that's
and it's
right.
really good. That's where most of the people have barns or horses, and so we look for those areas and advertise in those areas to try to get people to adopt these cats. And they'll live, a good, healthy barn cat who's well cared for will live for 10 to 15 years outdoors. Feral cats on their own, typically, 8 years is a long life for a cat that doesn't have any human interaction or community support.
Well, I met a barn cat when I told you, I think I sent you the picture. We did an interview out at Donkey Meadows out in Purcellville, and this cat was very, I mean, he's a good example of what you're talking about. He was comfortable being around people, but he was independent too.
Yeah. Yeah, they are still there. I mean, they are catty. they do their thing. Some people think they're mean, that they will hiss at you occasionally, but that's really because they're afraid. It's a defensive posture that they take if they're afraid or cornered. But when they're used to being around people and fed, sometimes you won't see them. Other times they'll just hang around and lay on a bale of hay and watch you, and you just know they're there, and they know you're there, and they do their thing.
Yeah.
I think she wants to see you again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to see her. I love cats. I have a little black kitty, so I was a colony caretaker in Herndon, and they were mostly all black cats, and I adopted one of the females. Her name is Shayla, and she lives very happily with me. She's still a little skittish, but she really likes being indoors.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So one of the things we talked about that has been very famous is Francine, the Lowe's cat in Richmond. Do you know of any garden centers like that who've adopted?
There was a Home Depot might have been the one in Sterling, I can't remember, that had a cat living in their garden center, and she actually had a litter of kittens. That's how they found her, because the kittens started to suddenly appear from behind. I think it was a pallet of mulch or something, and so we were able to get those kittens adopted, and they kept the cat there for years. Some of the stores don't allow it. It's really store by store. I don't think there's a corporate policy on it. It would be great if the garden centers would allow it, because that would help them with rodent control as well. I know a lot of the privately owned garden centers do have cats living on site, because we've TNR'd cats before for different areas, and so is the Humane Society. I don't want to say which ones they are, but
That's all right.
yeah, the private garden centers recognize the value of having cats roaming the property, and it's nice for clients too to see the animals there.
Well, I can mention that the Reston Farm Market, which is on Reston Parkway, has a resident cat. And she just wanders to the store. She'll greet you. She mostly sleeps under the cash register.
Yeah, cats do sleep a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be great. There's a variety of places where people, businesses or where private people can adopt the cats and keep them there. A lot of breweries have cats.
Yes.
We just recently, a tortoiseshell cat who I'm fostering now gave birth out at Vanish in Leesburg, and they called us because it was in their sheep shed. They have some sheep and a llama there, and the farmhand saw the mother and the babies that were born the day after. She made a little nest in the barn, so we rescued them, and the mom turned out to be pretty friendly as well, so she's going to be up for adoption, and we've got 4 kittens that are about a month away from being up for adoption. So it's the breweries have them, the wineries have them. There's plenty of places for anywhere there's an outdoor place with a building. You can have a barn cat.
Well, even in the city, there are breweries. I think there's a brewery in Chicago that deliberately adopted cats to, for rodent control.
Yeah, it works. It definitely works. I was in New York City for my birthday back in March, and there were some businesses there that had cats as well, rescue cats. So it's everywhere you can do it. You just have to kind of work with your environment and keep the cats in a safe place. So if they do have access to the outdoors, you know how much access they have and what the dangers are. But the cats will adapt to it. Once the city cats behave differently from the country cats. They're used to the traffic, so they use these storm drains to get around. So that instead of crossing the streets, where they don't have to worry about that out in Western Loudoun or Southern Fairfax.
Well, there's so many things about your story that I am concerned about, because the data center growth in this area is really disturbing. for so many reasons. But the other side of the story was how much human help you got. The employees were helping, the neighbors were helping. That's really encouraging. Could you just say more about that?
Yeah, we were actually very surprised because we've dealt with other similar issues, not necessarily for data centers, but where buildings are being destroyed or neighborhoods are being built. Yeah. When it used to be the housing boom, now it's the data center boom. And the same concerns were there, particularly with people concerned about the environment, the loss of trees, the loss of open space and forestry. And it's easy to reserve green space or to recreate green space after you strip an area and build houses, and you have a park for the community members to use, and that's nice. But the wildlife doesn't survive that, and when there are cat colonies out there as well that aren't really wildlife, they're more companion animals, they have an even harder time because they really do rely on some relationship and support from people in the community to watch out for medical issues, and they can also bond with people, and they can become dependent. They really aren't wildlife. So the concerns are there with data centers because with data centers there is no green space. They strip the area and it's covered with buildings, and they can't really work around trees and things, and they're not concerned about the beautification after it's been built. It's all about the buildings and security. So it's a little bit harsher than dealing with the old development. But so with those developers, we weren't allowed on the property. Once they cleared it, it was done, and you really didn't have a concern about the animals that were there. With the data centers, even after data centers are built, we get requests from employees who find that some cats are there inside the fenced area, and they'll get traps and trap the cats so we can get them out. So it's kind of a different, I don't know what's different about it or why the people are seem to be different, but they seem to be more compassionate and concerned, and maybe it's because what else is there to do at a data center? You notice a cat outside, it's something different from the computers buzzing away. But these people were very good to work with, especially the construction team that was really loading the equipment in and out. They would feed the cats at lunchtime. They were very helpful. And as we were trapping, if they still saw cats, because if we don't see them when we're there trapping, you think you've got them all, they would tell us if they saw any more cats so we could go back and get them, up until the date where we weren't allowed for safety reasons to return. So it was a very good experience, and it was an unusual experience. Wow. Hopefully that becomes the trend, that they are aware of the damage to the environment and the concern for the animals that were there before the buildings go up.
Well, that's kind of a reminder to all of us to pay attention to that and to think about the impact on wildlife, to keep our eyes open and see what we can do to help. And
pre-planning, if you see cats, or there may be dogs, there may be other pets that are there, especially when they're going in so close to neighborhoods. To think about it and to do some planning in advance to try to mitigate the damage or the potential harm you do to the living species that are there, plants or animals.
Well, just on another level or higher level of the topic, just say more for our audience about what the differentiation about an outdoor cat. Now, first of all, as you said, and I agree, cats are not wild animals. Even when we say feral cats, that doesn't mean that they're wild animals. They are domestic animals.
Right. Yeah, they are. And instinctively, when a cat doesn't have human interaction, and it's the same with any animal, including humans, the human touch is a very important thing, and human to human touch and human to animal touch. So if you have a pet cat or a pet dog and you never touch the animal, the day that you go to do it, it doesn't understand that that's a loving action. So when you have animals who are born outdoors, their instinct is to survive. So they're initially afraid of everything. Everything is a threat until they develop a knowledge that it isn't, and then they develop some kind of a comfortable relationship. So and that's why when we go trap, we find kittens, we try to get them when they're younger than 10 weeks old, because it seems about 10 to 12 weeks when they're about 3 months old is when those instincts really set in and that behavior becomes learned. You can still overcome it, and people do when they adopt. I've got rescue cats that started as they didn't want to be touched, and now they sit in my lap. But it took years for them to get used to me, and if a stranger comes in the house, they're gone. They'll run and hide. So you can overcome those, but as a rescue, when we're handling hundreds and hundreds, 500 to 600 cats a year, 100 to 150 kittens a year. You can't hang on to them for a year in a foster home to try to get them to be friendly. So we really look for those kittens that are under 12 weeks of age when you can shape that's their growth, that key point in their life where they're going to learn that behavior. So the more you interact with them, the more likely they are to become indoor pets. And the feral cats, there's a behavior characteristic of a companion animal that's afraid. It doesn't know you, so its reaction is to look fierce. It'll hiss, or it'll, act like it's. People interpret it as aggression. It's really not. It's a fear behavior to defend themselves and protect themselves to get the threats away. But they're still, once they get used to feeders, we call it feeder friendly. They typically know who's taking care of them. They'll do the figure 8 between your legs when you're putting food down, but you don't want to pick them up because they're not that close to you yet. So it's pretty typical.
Well, there's so much good information here, Tom. Thank you so much for saying this. And we are going to provide pictures and links to the barn cat, so if there's an opportunity for someone to adopt one, they'll be able to find that information, on your website. And so nice to meet you, Missy. Thank you very much for entertaining us.
Yeah, she's great. There's no fee for adopting the barn cats either, so we just appreciate people helping them survive.
Thank you. In the words of Leonardo da Vinci, the smallest feline is a masterpiece. Thanks to Loudoun Community Cat Coalition, and thank you for visiting my Pet Info Café, where refills are bottomless and the love of pets is limitless. The cafe is closing now, so fill up, and I'll see you next time. In the meantime, you may visit petinfocafe.com for more great information about pets.